Welcome to the Manage Self, Lead Others Leadership podcast with Nina Sunday for experienced and aspiring people managers. This show will help you explore ways to become a more intentional leader. Each episode, host Nina Sunday speaks with some of the brightest business minds on the planet who share a passion to elevate and transform team culture. Workplace culture hides in plain sight. Is yours flourishing? Join the movement to make your workplace a better place to work. Are you ready? Because it's time to manage self, lead others.
Sonia Jeantet developed the Integrative Leader model, leveraging the full potential of one's thinking abilities through wholebrain thinking. Author of The Integrative Leader, How Leaders Use Both Sides of Their Brain to Build Resilient Companies, and with an MBA in International Management and a Master's of Personal and Executive Coaching, Sonia Jeantet was formerly a strategic sales executive in Fortune 100 organizations, Hewlett-Packard, American Express, and Digital Equipment Corporation. Welcome, Sonia Jeantet. So I met Sonia Jeantet in the C-Suite Network. So welcome, Sonia Jeantet.
Thank you, Nina. I really appreciate you inviting me onto your podcast for managing self and leading others.
Well, you mentioned that your book, The Integrative Leader, is all about whole brain leadership, and that really caught my fancy. So I would really love to talk to you about what makes a whole brain leader. You've got the different returns on investment that you specify. You've got a framework around that. So, but you also, well, because you've got your MBA and your master's in coaching, you've got a very storied career in Fortune 100 companies as a strategic business development executive. So you started off at Hewlett-Packard, was it?
Correct.
And they handed you I was reading in your book, they handed you an onboarding notebook saying it's the HP way. Is that right?
Yeah. So I started at American Express.
Oh, you started at American Express?
Yeah. So straight out of graduate school, I was hired by American Express originally to go overseas and open operating centers. And so when I started there, after being there for a whole year in training, they basically said, you know what, there's a delay. We're not going to be able to open up the operating centers. So, you can stay in the US. And by then I'd met the man who would become my husband, and he was in California. So I basically transferred out here and started, in those days, you were looking through the paper, you weren't going online to find jobs. And there was a big hiring that what they were doing with companies for people who were going to go into sales, business development, that were different than the typical salesperson in the technology sector. And one of those qualifications was being a woman. The other qualification was not being an engineer, because they had come to the conclusion by actually studying IBM and their successful reps that most of them were really good at primarily interacting with the client in a very holistic way. So that's why I ended up getting hired by Hewlett-Packard. And they decided that basically they had like a small training program, but the whole focus of joining HP was that you had to be able to find yourself, if you will, a territory or a manager that wanted to hire you. So from a very early start at HP, it was about learning how to be really an entrepreneur and connect with several different kinds of thinking. And so I would say, and then you were partnered with an engineer. So I would say that very early on in my career, I became very aware that the kinds of thinking that was going on with people in different parts of the company and different professions created, if you will, the connecting field to be able to have a productive discussion or have a successful outcome. So that's how I ended up getting initially interested in, how are people thinking? What questions are they asking themselves? Why should we be going down that path? And it would be many years later when I decided that I wasn't getting as excited about being in the industry anymore, that I became an executive coach. And as part of being an executive coach, you have to have different assessments that you use with your clients, depending on what needs they currently have. And it was while I was doing that in very early stages that I came across an assessment that came from a company where the founder had originally worked at General Electric.
Oh, I see.
where
Right.
where they actually put, like, those little connectors to see like what parts of the brain light up.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah,
Now, you talk about becoming an integrative leader, and the very first point at that you've got about 6 points is administer a thinking preferences assessment. Now, of course, there are so many different learning style preferences, but do you have one or two that you recommend?
so I guess what I would say is if you start with the HBDI, that's a pretty good place. That's a Herman Brain Dominance
And
Indicator.
guess what? I
Uh,
knew you were going to say that, and I went into my archives and I
Look at
found
you.
the one
Look
I
at
did
you.
uh, decades ago. Well,
Yes,
over a
yes,
decade ago, and I'm proud
wow.
of the fact that I'm mostly red and yellow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes you very right brain dominant, which is why you are so engaging. And that's why you're always probably open to new ideas. One of the things that I would say was most consistent that I could look at when somebody had a strong preference of the right brain in the area of innovation is they often ended up becoming entrepreneurs or being able to work very well in entrepreneurial structures.
Yeah, I
So that
did
makes a
make the
lot of
shift
sense.
from a corporate role to self-employment, and
Mhm,
it took a bit of courage, but
mhm.
yeah, it
But let me ask you this, because you were in corporate roles, would you say that part of your corporate role in what you were doing, or the parts that energized you, was that you were looking at how to do things differently? Were you looking at how to make the particular product or
absolutely.
service? Yeah, so
Absolutely,
seems
and
like
they didn't wanna know, so that's why in fact, it was the speed reading. I had taught this speed reading course for over 10 years off and on as a part-time alongside, some other
Mhm,
corporate roles I had, and then I said, "I've got all these new ideas." "Oh, no, 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 we're happy with the way it is." And
mhm,
so then I spent 2 years on my own with a community group where I got to trial all my new ideas, and then 2 years
mhm,
later, I went, "I'm ready to take it to market." A new
mhm,
improved speed reading
mhm.
course.
Well, so the other thing, so the yellow part of you would make you be the one that asks the question in the company, what else could this mean? How
Yeah,
else could we do this? And the red part of you, I always say people that are that strong red, that means you have really good interpersonal interaction, would basically say you don't know a stranger. Well, no matter where you are, you could be put into they could drop you on another planet, and you would meet people, you would find out what they were all about, because there's that natural curiosity and that natural connection to others. And so I'm not surprised when I
some
say that
people
it's
ask me if
so.
I'm a journalist because I find everybody's life story interesting, and
Mhm.
everybody has an
That's a
interesting
story.
life story, and you should never
Mhm.
write, for example, old people. You should never write
Mhm.
people off. You never make a
Mhm.
judgment and go, because whatever they are
Mhm.
now, there's often some amazing backstory that's
Mhm.
worth finding out about. Now, your book has chapters on 6 specific separate ROIs, returns on
Correct.
investment. The
Correct.
first one is situational awareness, and I think
Yes.
you've sort of aligned it with who, what, where, when, why, and how, which I love.
Correct.
I
Yes.
love that. I
Yes.
love those 6 questions.
Because those are the questions we ask ourselves when we're
Oh,
trying to solve a problem. And so the return on investment is about situational awareness.
mm,
You understand exactly where you are in the marketplace or where your business is at this particular point in time. And you have to then go through an assessment of, is that where you want it to be? And where do you want it to go? And that one is one where you're having to use both sides of the brain. So when you're answering the question of where are we, you're having to tap into both areas.
reality,
Yeah. When you're asking, like, what is the problem that we have? That's very much of a left brain, very much of an
right?
analytical kind of thing. And then when you're looking at how are we going to get it done, you're looking at process. And so that's very much about the left brain. And so when you look at places where people are very concerned with, you got to take this step first, this step first, this step next, those are left brain dominant areas. And then when you're looking at like innovation. Companies or organizations or industries, they have to really think about breakthrough areas and new areas. That's you're asking you're answering the question why? Why are we doing this? Why are we in this business? And then what's the return on the idea? Because you could have returns on ideas that are phenomenal but impossible to implement.
Yes, we
So
call
so
that high effort, high impact, but high effort.
exactly. And then the one that you cannot get away from if you're in business, but you can manage it in different ways is who? Who am I going to be involved with in order who's our client? Who do we need to put together in order to form a successful team?
Mm.
And that's return on interpersonal relationships.
Oh,
And
right.
that's where the emotional intelligence comes in.
Mm.
I have yet to, when I think of the different stages as an executive coach, in what areas people can become deficient, in which you realize how long of a process is it in the coaching and how much of a mindset change is it for them. I would say that the people that don't have a lot of skills or haven't grown their emotional intelligence skills, that's the one where they'll see the biggest impact once they're able to actually really connect with others. And then the last question, besides the where, is the when.
Yes.
That's like the silver bullet, that's the gold nugget, because understanding when to take action makes all the difference between success and failure. And so for that, the person has to be able to really understand the bigger picture. So I call it being able to zoom out and zoom in. Zoom out to what is overall going on in your marketplace, what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the
Mm.
world, and then be able to say, okay, based on that, this is the place we need to go to right now.
So which
And
ROI is the win? Is that return on implementation or?
no, that's return on timing. It's like return on timing. It's like
Ah,
what is it that yeah, what is it that I'm uh, it's like if you think of uh, so COVID, what
yeah.
happened under COVID, right? We all got shut down. And
Mm.
suddenly, the only way you're going to be able to interact with other people was going to be online. You were going to
Yes,
have to do video kind of stuff.
that's
So,
right.
so potentially, so people who had video-based businesses that they could try to sell, it, most of the time they would say, well, only that's when we were in our conference rooms and only when people are going to be meeting from time to time if we have over there. Suddenly something like that happens and everybody now needs to operate and engage differently
Mm.
and learn
Yeah.
how to communicate differently. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us more about how an integrative leader should uh, operate
Mhm.
in the workplace.
Okay. So an integrative leader is going to take a look at their business. I created the model so that I felt like you could walk in around the model to
Mm.
sort of check. It's almost like if you were if you were doing a body scan and you were trying to see like, well, what parts of is my head healthy? Is my heart healthy? Is my stomach healthy?
Mhm.
So it's like you start wherever you want to start. Ideally, you start in the left brain because that's where it requires more of the analytical part.
Yes.
And so you basically say like, so what business are we in?
Hmm.
What is it that we really do here? What is it that we really are known for? Is that still relevant today? And then the next one would be to go to the right brain, try something else, is go into the why. And basically it's the understand, well, why are we doing this? Why are we using this technology? Why are we in this specific market? Why do our clients use our products? Why do they use our services? So then at that point in time, you've created, if you will, sort of the overall bigger picture of the business. Now let's go into the actual how would we implement it? And so you go into the how, which is,
Right.
return on implementation. And then you go into the, well, who should be involved with this? Who should be on the project? Who are our clients? Who do we need to interact with in order to make this happen? And
Mm.
then stepping outside of that into the bigger picture, taking all four quadrants into consideration is, so based on all of that, where are we? Where are we? Are we like at the beginning phase? Are we at the end of a particular era? Do we need to start thinking about doing something differently? And then the last one is, so when do we do this? When do we launch? When do we make this happen? And I would say that having worked in technology for 16 years, and I would say that that was always one of the biggest questions is you could actually have your technology announcement happen too early, and therefore you would only get your early adopters, and you would never build a solid, base for your product. So you often got bought out, and somebody else got to get the benefits of
It's
that.
funny how it's the first mover isn't always the most successful. It's the second mover.
Exactly. So
So
that's, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, so you obviously have a framework where it's the art of asking the right question at the right time. And
Correct.
that's brilliant too. So that'd be a reason to get the book. So you can start framing the questions and asking them in the right order.
Mm. And one of the things that I was guided by my publisher in writing the book was that I should have a story for each one of the areas that a leader has to assess, an organization has to assess, a group needs to assess as to where they are, so that you could understand how it was that they went around solving it. And what is it that you need to assess in your business? So,
Have you got a short story you can share?
yeah, I would say one of my favorite short stories is the one that has to do with uh, return on. So I'll tell you the story and then I'll go into the return.
Okay,
So
fine.
basically,
Beautiful.
so basically, I was, out of the blue. I got a call from a particular a CEO. They worked for a small company at that time. It was a company that was created by angel investors, and he had heard of my name because I'd been working as a coach at Toyota. And so he was one of their divisions used some of his services. And so he said, I would like to talk to you because I need to be putting together a strategic plan for my company and my group. And so I sat down with him and ended up finding out that he would have been hired to basically take the company public or be able to, find some other way of making, of paying off the angel investors and
Mm.
being able to continue with the company. So I sat down with him and said, okay, so we do need some strategizing sessions, and I need to be able to meet all of your top team members and assess sort of what's going on. Long story short, we ended up being able to put together 2 workshops within a period of 3 months, where we were able to identify exactly what was working, exactly what wasn't working, and then identify the plan to roll it out. Now, this happened to happen at the same time that it was the year 2007 going into 2008, when we had a great recession. And so as the bad news
I remember
unfolds,
it well.
he said to me, well, will this still work? I said, yeah, it's just we're going to do it on a smaller scale, and you're
Mm.
going to have to be much more focused. And so because so it was like we had the right people in place, we asked all the right questions, we put together the right plan. Now it was a question of just being able to implement with certain strategic clients. And because he was able to do that, within 2 years, they were acquired by a global organization that was actually originally based in Brazil. And basically everybody who was part of that original team ended up getting a beautiful payout.
Oh.
And the company basically said, the acquiring company said, no, we bought you because we like how you think. So we want you to stay.
Oh.
So they were able to, if you will, be able to sell the company, take their profits, and be able to continue working. The kind of world that we're living in right now, in order to be successful, you have to be operating from a whole brain thinking kind of place. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful.
Well, look, it's fascinating speaking with you, Sonia, and I'm enjoying this virtual cup of tea with you.
Oh, yes, that's
um,
right. I look at the tea.
how can people find you, and who do you work with?
So people can find me on my website. I'm at cimaed.com. The
Yes.
reason that that's the name is when I first started my business, I wanted to call it Peak Peak Performance.
Yeah.
And I found out that, peak performance, peak executive performance was taken. So I thought, okay, I'm originally from South America, Colombia. And the word cima in Spanish means the top of the mountain peak.
The summit.
So I thought,
There we go.
so I thought, okay, I'm going to call it CIMA Executive Development because that's
Right.
the business that I'm in. So it's cimaed.com. I am also on LinkedIn, and I have my profile there, Sonia Jeantet.
And all of it will be in the show notes as well.
Yes.
And also,
yes.
we've got a little freebie that we'll be giving away.
And when you go to my site, any one of the pages that you're on, you
Yes.
will see this slider come out and say, download the questionnaire. And so I want people to be able to have an opportunity, because we recently had like the spring equinox. So think of it as a start of a new year.
Oh,
yeah.
Lovely talking with you. Thanks so much for your time today. This episode, we've been speaking with Sonia Jeantet, author of The Integrative Leader, How Leaders Use Both Sides of Their Brain to Build Resilient Companies. My name is Nina Sunday. This is the Manage Self, Lead Others podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and message me on LinkedIn. Tell me what you like about the podcast, perhaps suggest a guest. Till next time, enjoy good things.
Nina Sunday is on a mission to help leaders transform culture. To book Nina Sunday CSP to speak at your conference, visit ninasunday.com to request a proposal. Nina travels from Brisbane, Australia for in-person presentations Australia-wide. Twice certified virtual presenter, Nina Sunday presents virtually, globally, for any time zone.